session on Saturday at the Festival of Ideas. True Blue, what does it mean to be un-Australian? And we're going to have a vigorous analysis of what it is to be un-Australian, what it is to be Australian. And I'll introduce our guests for you shortly, but first we'll enjoy a short introductory video.
It's the curse of Graveyard Train.
It's a very quiet band we have.
Yeah.
I've lost my cursor, James. Lost the cursor. No. Sorry, folks.
Cut to the song. You want to do the song?
It obviously takes us a while to get warmed up on a Saturday morning. Beautiful.
It's coming out of the laptop.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no...
Do you want us to just play it?
Yeah, let's
Can
just...
we get a live version of this?
Yeah, let's do that.
If you want.
We're going to do that one.
We can do that one, you reckon? You want to do that? It's a bit early. We're in a band called Graveyard Train, and we're really not used to being up this early in the morning. I apologise if there are any long pauses and silences. It's, we had a very late gig last night. Do you want to play that song? It's a bit fast. What do you want, John?
It's a bit too energetic for this time of the morning.
We'll play a nice one.
Play a nice one.
Okay.
Then maybe, yeah. I've never played a gig in an armchair before.
Me neither.
No.
This feels good.
I don't quite know what to do with myself. So we're, oh, maybe I'll use this mic.
Right.
When we began this band, we called ourselves a horror country band. All of our songs are to do with like death and werewolves and mummies and the macabre and things like that. So we'll do a ghost song. This song's called Rosalie. It's all about a ghost that's haunted by a living person. You kind of like flip the thing on its head there. You got your C harp, John?
I do.
Like I said, it's early. I'll switch my guitar on. the sunlight on my skin. When I see your eyes, I feel it again. I'm a ghost, but I've stopped haunting you. Oh, Rosalie, you've been haunting me. I'm a ghost, but I've stopped haunting you. Oh, Rosalie, you've been haunting me. Take it away, buddy. When you're alone, I try to let you know I'm here with you in this big old house. And when you're sad, I try to comfort you. Gorgeous. But when I take your hand, I give you a chill. I'm a ghost, but I've stopped haunting you. Oh, Rosalie, you've been haunting me. I'm a ghost, but I've stopped haunting you. Oh, Rosalie, I love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me introduce Graveyard Train to you, ladies and gentlemen. They are Nick Finch, Adam Johansen and Matt Duffy. And together with John Van Tiggelen, they'll be exploring the issues of what it means to be un-Australian and what it means to be Australian. Let me welcome you to country. And we thank the traditional owners of the land we sit upon today. And the traditional owners of this part of the country are called... Thank you. I'm from Adelaide, and so we just simply thank the Kaurna people, so that's a bit more of a mouthful. In fact, I just share with you a little anecdote. Years ago, in fact, before the election which elected Kevin Rudd ever so briefly, there was the CFMEU had an art gallery opening of paintings about work choices. And we waited for Auntie Maureen to turn up, but she was late, they wanted to get on with the show. So they said, Anthony, you'll have to do the Welcome to Country. I said, I can't do the Welcome to Country. So anyway, I stood up to do the Welcome to Country, and all these Aboriginals looking around, looking horrified. And I excused myself saying, listen, my father came here in 1956 from Ireland, and believe me, the English have hated my people a lot longer than they've even known about yours. And that seemed to break the ice, and I was forgiven. Let me introduce John Van Tiggelen to you, ladies and gentlemen. He was born in Holland and grew up in country Victoria, so who better to know what it is to be Australian or Dutch Australian at any rate. He graduated in science and worked as a tour guide in the Daintree rainforest before turning to journalism. And since 1998, he's been writing for The Good Weekend, which is the weekend magazine of The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. He's the author of Mango Country, about his a collection of essays documenting North Queensland, which very handily is for sale as you leave today. So, without much more ado, I should explain to you that John and the band first came into real collision when the band were performing in Tamworth. And I think the question of Tamworth's Australianness is probably a good introductory point to start to explore the question of what it is to be Australian and what amounts to un-Australian. So perhaps I could hand it over to you, John, to perhaps begin the dialect on that topic.
Oh, thank you, Anthony. Yeah, the whole idea for from my point of view, for the Tamworth trip was, I was originally looking for a punk band to go deep into outback Australia and see how that would be received. I basically was looking for a bit of conflict, I suppose, being a journo. But a friend put me onto the Graveyard Train, and when I found out they were gothic murder horror country or whatever the brand is, I thought, perfect, that's going to go down a treat in Tamworth. And I was becoming an Australian citizen the week after. So I thought Tamworth would be my last hurrah as a non-Australian. And it might even change my mind about becoming Australian after I saw all the flag waving there. Because Tamworth is a place where people take their country music extremely seriously, and they take it so seriously that their idea of Australian country music ends up being American country music. They sing in American accents, and there's a lot of flag waving. And I was just explaining to Anthony earlier that if you've ever seen Lee Kernahan in concert, I know he's done a lot of flood relief, and I know Kevin Rudd made him Australian of the Year, which is when I went off Kevin Rudd. But he drops to his knees at one point in his shows and salutes the flag. There's a big flag in the backdrop, and he does that kind of thing, which is wonderfully patriotic of him. But it is also a very serious way of loving your country and loving your music. And this band, Graveyard Train, obviously has a more irreverent take, which I would argue is a more Australian take. But for all that, when a band like that, and we went with another band as well called Cherrywood, when we went to Tamworth, the reception is kind of mixed. There are people who love Graveyard Train because they're a very personable band and just attract people, so they do draw big crowds, but there is an element of Tamworth that just wants to resist it, and the bands like Graveyard Train and Cherrywood are called the Rockers because they disturb the peace of Peel Street, and the piece being the Bush Balladeers, who do lots of Slim Dusty covers, which is wonderful, but it's not all there is. And to the extent that a protest song was written the year after Graveyard Train played in the street with the amps turned up quite high, apparently. And some of these Bush Balladeers issued a protest song, basically telling Tamworth organisers to keep the Rockers out. And we've brought a copy of that CD. We'll play it a little bit later, so we could play it now if you like.
Play it now.
Yeah, maybe not play all of it.
I still haven't heard it, actually.
Yeah, you haven't heard it.
I want to hear the
That's
song
right.
that's been written about
you
us.
guys. Yeah, it was being sold at the busker that was right next to these guys in Peel Street in Tamworth. So you can imagine there's 400 buskers in Peel Street, and quite a few of the old Bush Balladeers were selling these protest CDs, saying get rid of these loud guys. Anyway, yeah, if you could please play some, James, and happy birthday.
I wandered into Tamworth and I heard a sonic boom as I ambled down old Peel Street on a Tuesday afternoon. My memory started wandering back to the good old days when country was real country, played a real fair dinkum way.
The music they were playing would win any rock award as they drowned a little busker out, picking out 3 chords. He tried to sing out louder in a true blue country style, but the Rockers won out every time. You could hear them for a mile.
Don't let them murder Tamworth,
Don't let them steal the Peel.
don't let big business call the tune, tell them how you feel.
Our pioneers would tremble up in heaven's hall of fame to hear what's happening here on earth to their country music name.
James, that's probably enough for that, I think. I'll play the rest of it for the boys later. There's some good verses
My
in
God,
there.
the pain really comes through the lyrics there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, yes.
Yeah, it's brutal. That's probably, from what I know of Tamworth, which is precious little, often the singers will affect an American accent. I mean, that fella then just didn't. Did you find that in Tamworth?
Yeah,
How do
definitely.
they reconcile that with being so committed to country and being Australian?
And every second song is Sweet Home Alabama as well. They're they're playing a lot of American country. Actual American covers with actual American, well, not actual American accents, and It's very strange. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Tamworth Country Music Festival, but it's a very, very strange place. It's sort of like being on safari or something.
And yet the whole event and the whole town is sort of draped in the flag, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
ostensibly supposed to be uber Australian.
Yeah, the Australian flag and Jayco camper van flags and Bundaberg rum flags and Forex flags.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very patriotic. But, but that CD is and that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that was kind of a 4-minute way of calling somebody un-Australian. You know, that's basically the point of what those buskers were saying, that these boys, they're not true blue, they reckon it for the rest of us. And it's that, yeah, that's what kind of attracted me to write an essay which has been published in Griffith Review, but about the band and about Tamworth. But that's essentially what that song is. It's just calling you guys un-Australian. You know, it's one of these terms that gets slung around a lot.
Yeah.
Well, John, I want to explore the origins of the idea of un-Australian, and I think you've got something you can tell us about that. What from the beginning was thought to be un-Australian, said to be un-Australian, by whom from the beginning?
Yeah, I've looked into it a bit. I mean, it's become very fashionable now. In the very early days, it goes back to the mid 1800s actually, but it was generally used until probably the 60s or 70s for if you were a communist. So Stanley Bruce and Joseph Lyons, Prime Ministers of Australia, they used to call people un-Australian if they were basically, you know, Reds, if they were communists. And then it morphed a little bit. It still wasn't used very much, but it morphed into a more cultural thing, that if you're un-Australian, it was kind of, and I'm going to use this word, I hope you don't mind, nobody's too sensitive, it's kind of a way of calling someone a poofter. It was the wowser. So if you didn't drink enough beer, or you drank mid-strength beer, or you pissed sitting down, or any of that kind of stuff, then you were un-Australian. And that went right up to John Howard's reign, and then John Howard just turned the meaning of the term around. He was the first one that really went back to basics, back to the political meaning, and all of a sudden, he wasn't the communist, but it was the socialist. Anti-war protesters were un-Australian, the wharfies were un-Australian, the striking workers were un-Australian. He used the term more than anyone. In fact, there was a fantastic Media Monitors survey done in 2005 which documents the way John Howard actually changed the meaning of the term, because it found that in 1995 the term was used 50 times around Australia in all of the broadsheet papers in one whole year. So hardly used at all. By 2000 it was used 400 times. By 2004 it was used about 1,000 times, 800 to 1,000 times, and 28% of those times it was quoting John Howard. So he really was the one who flung the term around, and or used the term a lot and flung the meaning around to turn it back to sort of a political meaning, that you were not so much a wowser, you were more of a traitor. Although now it's being used again to just put people down. You know, you've seen the anti-pokies legislation campaign. It's very much in the you know, if you try and restrict limitations on, if you're trying to protect problem gamblers, that's essentially what it's about, the legislation. If you try and do that, you're un-Australian. That's the campaign. I think it's unAustralian.com, which is basically, in the old terminology, that's you'reapoofter.com, because that's really the same way of using that term as an insult. And it's the same people using that term as an insult as used to use the word poofter in 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even now in certain parts of the outback.
So it's always been a bit of a conservative-owned brand.
Yeah, it has.
How did that happen?
Don't know. I think it was just. I think because it started as that you're a traitor, you're a communist sort of thing. I think you know, it was definitely the Conservatives that were aiming it at the Reds first, and then. But now it's more a cultural thing. But the good thing is that it's turning around now. Now people are taking the mickey out of it again. It's become a satirical term almost. You know, you hear people say something is un-Australian, and they're really just having a go at you and just not being very serious at all. So that's probably more the traditional Australian way of being irreverent. And,
it's kind of interesting, like the flip side of that is like the Southern Cross has been taken as this kind of hyper-masculine thing, like you're talking about, the poofterism of being un-Australian. Yeah. Like, whenever we go up to Tamworth, we have a competition. It's like the first person to spot a Southern Cross tattoo, everybody in the band has to buy them a beer. And that competition became so easy that now it's moved up to the first person to spot a Southern Cross neck tattoo.
I found
And
I
he
saw
got it. He got it this year. We all had to buy him
Yeah.
a beer. But you just get these massive guys with sort of. I saw a guy with a Southern Cross neck tattoo, and it said Aussie Mayhem written across the back of his neck, and it's just like, you know, that's just this weird Australian pride going on. It always seems to be these kind of big, buff head kind of guys who are just draping themselves in this symbol. It's weird. Yeah.
Who is it done for the benefit of, do you think? I mean, who are they speaking to? Who are they showing themselves to when they get out like that?
I'm not sure, actually. I mean, up in Tamworth as well, there's also like a whole bunch of T-shirts that you can buy, which are really sort of slagging off on Australian people. There's like these T-shirts that say, was it like we eat meat, we drink beer.
I eat meat, I drink beer, I speak English. That was, yeah. And they were openly sold too, these T-shirts.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So there are kind of those.
Also with the Southern Cross.
Also with the Southern Cross, obviously. Yeah. So there's sort of those things which I think, I don't know, maybe they're directed at un-Australians or, you know, I'm not
Their idea of, an un-Australian.
Yeah. We just go there once a year. It's kind of foreign to me. Like, I don't know.
That's interesting in that the Australianness appears to be focused on the Southern Cross, so the Union Jack seems to be dropping out of the picture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely, actually. The Southern Cross has sort of taken on this, a new nationalistic kind of...
So you don't see any Union Jack neck tattoos?
No. I don't think so. But it's really scary how many Southern Cross neck tattoos you see. Yeah. It's a pretty strange thing. I mean, I don't know if other countries have the same kind of neck tattoo flag.
I can't think of
thing
the
going on.
Holland. No,
or it's just
I don't know. There's no clog tattooed on the side of the neck of Dutch people that I know of.
Yeah.
Tulip maybe.
Yeah. But it's kind of scary, you know.
Late last night on television there was an old Simpsons and it had Homer and he painted the back window of his car with a Confederate flag and the slogan was "We love guns and fetuses." It's probably shades of that sort of nationalism.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Going back to the music though, there was that band Cherrywood that played when they were busking in the street because these guys were sharing a spot in the street with them. They really did cop some abuse that we all saw where, you know, one guy walked past and as Cherrywood was playing, they're sort of what you would call thrash rockabilly sort of stuff, but still country, very much country. And this guy just stormed past, and he may have had a few beers, but he just stormed past and goes, "That's not country." And then it came within an inch of a fight. It was very tense at times.
Yeah.
So that tension is there.
There's definitely a lot of tension at Tamworth.
Yeah, and you wonder why they are so defensive. You know, that kind of patriotism has always intrigued me because those kind of patriots say they love their country more than anyone else. But they're actually the ones, for some reason, they feel under siege. For some reason, they feel like the country is under threat of whatever, I don't know, of Melbourne rockers or refugees or whatever it is. And it's the people who are accused of un-Australian who are perfectly relaxed at being here, who love the landscape, love travelling around, you know, all that kind of stuff, and don't have a worry in the world. It's kind of a paradox.
Could it be that the idea of the country that they love, that they have in their own minds, doesn't exist anymore? And they're probably unconsciously conscious of that. That out there, it is very multicultural. There are a lot of people that don't speak English. There are cultures that don't eat so much meat. And perhaps they're the last stand.
Could be.
Yeah, could be.
I imagine you have a song that might reflect some of those feelings.
I play in a horror country band. I don't. All my songs are about nonsense. Would you like me to play?
We certainly love a bit of nonsense at this hour on a Saturday morning. Yes.
This is part of the reason why Tamworth hates us so much, because we don't have songs about anything relevant to the country.
I mean, that's what you're saying. Joy McKean was.
Yeah, Joy McKean. I met Joy McKean, Slim Dusty's wife up there, who's lovely. And he's actually very tolerant of new kinds of music coming into Tamworth, much more than a lot of Tamworth.
All right, what should we play?
Play a song?
Another soft one?
Sure.
Sorry, it's still very early. Another ghost one?
What are you thinking?
We could do No Such Thing as Ghosts and act like idiots in front of these nice people.
Sure.
This is another ghost song, and we act like idiots. Adam
down,
plays the
Shane.
chain in the band.
Sit down, Shane.
Sit down, chain. Armchair chain.
I've done this before.
Yeah.
This is going to be difficult. Gonna
We're
get out
actually
of the way.
a seven-piece band as well. This isn't quite the full gamut, but this is the only bunch that... Oh, thank you. Cheers. This is the only
It's okay.
amount of people that we could get out of bed. Oh.
There's no such thing as ghosts, I whisper to something sitting on my chest. There's no such thing as ghosts, I whimper. I see a white horse's head as I pull my sheets up higher. I see I'm not alone. Dreams are dreams, I cry to the silence. The silence answers back, 2, 3, 4. There's no such thing as ghosts, just demons taking the form of my loved ones and family. And nighttime is the fog that clouds my reason. And I'm a reasonable man. As I stare into this mirror, I see I'm not alone. Whispered words for my ears only keep whispering and whispering the same old song. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Hey.
Well, it seems to me you can't have a notion of something being un-Australian unless there's some sort of template for that to be judged against. So what is it to be Australian? Are there any Australian values?
Well, apparently there's lots of Australian values, things like mateship and all that sort of nonsense, but...
But what on earth is mateship apart from having friends and feeling
Well, that's
good about
right,
them?
yeah, I'm sure
Doesn't
everybody
do
else
that?
in the world has friends.
It seemed a bit strange, because I mean, remember John Howard wanted to put that in the preamble to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Which is a bit sort of laughing stock territory, really, isn't it? John, what do you say about that? What are Australian values?
The whole thing about mateship, if you come from another country where we don't value a male form of friendship above the female one, it's very strange, because that's what mateship essentially is. There's a certain masculinity in the term. You use it much more about men than you do about women. So if you use that as a defining value of a country, then you're saying more than it's just about friendship. And yeah, I've always found that very puzzling, because all the other values, you know, loyalty and laconic sense of humour and all that kind of thing, resilience, those things you encounter everywhere. I know when, after the floods, for example, Anna Bligh very much spoke to Queenslanders, but the rest of Australia also heard it, and people interstate sort of frowned a bit when she said that we breed them tough north of the border. You know, you knock us down, we get back up again. But so does everybody, you know. I mean, it's very important that she said that at that time, and it had a point, an emotional point. But we shouldn't get carried away and think that is actually a unique Queensland way of being or a unique Australian way of being, because the Japanese were just as resilient. The New Zealanders after the earthquake were just as resilient, and Al-Qaeda will probably be just as resilient as well. So, yeah, it's a strange way of, you know, it almost reflects a certain insecurity to bang on about Australian values. We don't do that in Holland.
It's interesting you mentioned Anna Bligh, because looking at the situation up here from the perspective of Adelaide, there's always been a bit of a feeling that Queenslanders do feel themselves or present themselves or project themselves as being more Australian than everybody else. And you, as being someone from Holland, for instance, who came here as a youngster and having grown, what's your perspective? Why is it that Queenslanders seem to see themselves as more Australian than everybody else?
I've got a North Queensland.
They love it up here. I mean, maybe that used to be a
it's not a Dutch perspective. It's a North Queensland perspective, because I spent 10 years up there and I love it up there. It's you know, yeah, I'm Dutch or Australian. It doesn't really worry me about what term I use there, but my favourite part of the world is North Queensland, and I'd live there forever if I could. But North Queenslanders see themselves as North Queenslanders. They actually want to succeed. You know, the Mayor of Townsville has forever got the North Queensland flag flying, and it's political death if you're a politician in North Queensland and you don't support the succession movement. In Brisbane, nobody hears about that, or if they do, they just smile and laugh. But up there, some people actually take it a little bit seriously, and so I can see why in Queensland there's still this need to unify the state and say we're all Queenslanders, because people in Townsville and Cairns don't really care about Brisbane. But in New South Wales, it's very much one state. Victoria is very much one state. Western Australia, very much the same. So I think Queenslanders have that sort of, the way they oversell the term, we are Queenslanders first and Australians second. I think that reflects a little bit of that tension between north and south, as much as it does between Brisbane and Canberra or Brisbane and Melbourne.
Well, why don't we ask members of the audience if they've got any questions they want to ask the panel before we hear from the band to close the session. So I don't know if we've got any volunteers to hand around this microphone. But we just need to engage you with the microphone, because it's all being recorded. So I'll hand this one over, because I'm surrounded by microphones up here. Paris Hilton up here. This gentleman here in the second, third row.
My comment is about West Australia, actually. When I fly there, I'm immediately called an Easterner. And it's that kind of labelling that goes on that I've always been curious about. They do stand aside and see themselves as a group apart from all of those people who live on the east. And I just wonder if there's a comment about that.
I think that happens everywhere. Like we come up to Brisbane or New South Wales and tell people that we're from Melbourne, and they call us Mexicans. It's just this sort of there's nothing serious about that. Nobody takes offence to that kind of thing. It's just I don't know what you'd call it. It's just kind of a nickname. But people like to associate themselves with it. You know, people are proud of where they're from, and we're not saying that we're not proud of being Australians. We love this country, and it's the best place in the world. But what we've been talking about is kind of the fine line between being proud of your country and being racist, essentially, by saying, this is our country, we love it, but go away, we're full. And that was another thing in Tamworth. There was stickers on cars saying, F off, we're full. And that's un-Australian, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to get back to that question, though, about Western Australia, in a way it's like North Queensland. You know, Western Australia thinks the East is pinching all their money. And North Queensland, again, they think Brisbane's pinching all their mining money as well. But I come from Holland. Holland fits 5 times into Victoria. It's tiny. I'm a southerner. The northerners, the ones from the other side of the Rhine, are the Protestants, the Amsterdam, the Rotterdammers. They're not my people. You know, I'm from south of the river. So yeah, it does happen everywhere, I agree. You get that parochiality wherever you go. Mm.
It is, yeah. Mm. Mm. Right. Mm.
Yeah. But I want to add something else to what Matt just said about the pride. When I did, you know, I've waited 33 years, and Slim Dusty's widow said to me, "You lazy creature," when I told her to become an Australian. And I was pretty equivocal about it, and I did it because I had to, because I was joining the Australian Public Service. And even when I went to the Dutch embassy and said, "Can I still have dual citizenship?" they said, "Only if you're marrying an Australian." I said, "Well, I am." And they said, "Well, we consider that becoming an Australian under duress." I thought, right, okay, I can live with that. So I am still a dual citizen. I'm not totally declogged, as a friend puts it. It was my declogging ceremony, I think. But when it happened, it totally overwhelmed me. You know, my kids bounded out of the car. My wife had given them little Australian flags secretly. So here we are talking about flag waving and how silly it all is. And I just about choked up because it was just a wonderful moment. My kids are all little Australians. Jumping out of the car, and here was Dad at last, you know, recognising that, yeah, this is something I really had to do. So, yeah, the pride is there, definitely. It's just, it's a little bit of moderation is nice, like anything.
Thank you. Just to go back to the thing about Queenslanders being, wanting to be so special. I lived in America for 20 years before I came here, and Texas and the southern states have exactly the same attitude. They want to secede. And I think all of that is actually a kind of exclusionary attitude. The more you have your little group, whichever they are, whether they're the male group, the female group, the blue-eyed group, the black-eyed group, the southerners, the northerners, basically what that does is it makes you feel comfortable. It's us against them. Mm. And I think that is a big problem we have everywhere, all over the world, not just in Australia.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate human condition. I think it's the way we've always been. It's really sad.
Hello. I'd just like to give you an idea that you might like to think about. I was trying to be an un-Australian. I was in New Zealand a couple of years ago, and because both my parents were Kiwis, and I had just done a very extensive tour over both islands, I was really rediscovering the history, if you like, the family history. And so I thought while I was there, I would ask them if I could be accepted as a Kiwi. Bearing in mind that both my parents were Kiwis. And incidentally, my father was killed in Hitler's war fighting for them. So there's a little bit. And then the other side, I drive around Australia 59. I come from Victoria. I have an accent. I sound like an Australian. I speak like an Englishman. I was peaches and cream complexion. Everyone thought I was a pom. So I have to defend my Australianness. Of course, I had no trouble doing that, but the point is that's the relevancy of being an Australian and un-Australian, just while I say it. So what would you like to comment on that one?
I think you summed it up pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
The New Zealand government was not going to even honour me with that one. I thought the circumstances were one, even if you just took the sacrifice of my father. So that's a small thing. Of course, to finish this, the person who represented Australia in the Republican movement was an Englishman. He was also a Gallipoli veteran, and that person there went back to England to visit his relatives, and they made him stand in the queue that said foreigners, meaning Australians, and of course that hit him so badly, and he was being an Australian citizen, although he was born and fought for the British. So you can see there, he was made an un-Australian, and he became the voice and everything of the Republican movement because of the way he was treated by the British government. There's no reciprocity for a POM who takes up the nationality of Australia, and that's the way he saw it.
Thank you. To me, there's no requirement that a value be a positive thing. And I was wondering whether, in fact, when you think about the fact that the old Bulletin magazine had on its masthead, Australia for the white man, whether, in fact, racism is an Australian value, or whether, as the lady in the front seat showed, given her American experience, it's just something that is common to groups of people who want to emphasise their insularity and their interdependence and their love of each other. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't think Australia's a racist country at all. But there are pockets. But you will find them in every country, absolutely. You'll find them in Holland, you'll find them everywhere. I mean, the funny thing is we talk about Australian values. The classic Dutch value, and sorry to go on about Holland, but it's all I know, but is tolerance. Well, I can tell you that's not a Dutch value. I mean, people in Holland, my relatives in particular, are no more tolerant than anybody I've met here. The Dutch, I think geography plays a much bigger part in a country's character than people allow for. The Dutch is a very small country. It's very tightly organised. It's very orderly. As soon as you go across the border into Belgium, it's like you're in another suburb where everything's messy. But the Dutch love order, and tolerance is just it's a byproduct of their desire for order. They just like to, they don't like mess, they don't like fighting, they don't like conflict. They just like everything in its place. And if there's lots and lots of people coming in, then they'll somehow deal with it and organise them and put them in certain suburbs and stuff like that. And then it gets, in the world press, it gets called tolerance, but it's actually not. It's just the Dutch being very anal about things. That's probably, you know, it's this need for space, to conserve space that feeds the Dutch character. That's why a Dutchman who comes to Australia just loves it here, because there's so much of it. So.
It's an interesting point you make about geography, because in a country like Australia, it's much easier to draw the drawbridges up, as opposed to Holland, where there's so much more need to be interdependent, because, as you say, you know, Belgium is just the suburb next door.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions for the panel?
In terms of Australianism, what it means to be Australian, I think the phrase mateship comes to mind. And while virtually all the other values that we can think of are in every society, the one thing that does seem to be some evidence for is mateship. And I haven't put this all together, but the survival rates of men in prisoner of war camps, the Australians out-survived, for example, the British because of the Australian mateship concept, whereas the British had a hierarchical system. They died in great numbers, and the Australians survived, and it's part of, there's evidence for it, and it's part of our mythology now. And it seems to be, I don't know what else there is that there's evidence for in terms of Australianism or un-Australianism, but mateship historically seems to be evidence for that. Any comment? Any comment on, is there evidence for anything else that we think of as Australian or un-Australian?
I don't know, what the research you just mentioned is very interesting. Having a bit of a science background, I wonder how biased the sample might be. Maybe the Australians in prison are healthier than the English that were in prison, for example. I'm just suggesting that there might be one factor, but let's take it at face value. It's probably true. Well, maybe it is true. Maybe they do look after each other better. Maybe because there is this particularly back then when Australia was less urbanised and the myth of the bush was much stronger. You know, it wasn't a myth. A lot of people did live in the bush and rely on each other for all sorts of things to overcome the distance that stood between them. Maybe mateship played a very big role. I would argue now that Australia's become more urbanised, more modern, and more like other countries. That probably plays less of a role than it used to. Yes. Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's one up at...
I'm Australian. I was born Australian. My partner was born in England. He became an Australian maybe 5-6 years ago. And what's interesting to me is when he came over here, he was struck by Australia's patriotism, how we all, you know, the sports and all that kind of thing. And I wonder if it's because we feel like it's Australia being a small country, relatively young country, it's us against the world. And I wondered, John, whether you felt that when you go back to Holland, that sense of, I guess, patriotism and that us against the world, do you see that?
I do a bit. Again, when Slim Dusty's widow, Joy McKean, asked me, why did you wait so long? I said to her, I know it's tongue-in-cheek and some of you won't like it, I said to her, Shane Warne. I found, and it goes back to the previous question as well, it's that the whole concept of mateship, that in Australia people seems to get embodied in the Australian cricket team. I don't mind cricket, I've come to like cricket, but the Australian cricket team I have a real problem with adopting as my team.
Yeah, so does he.
Yeah, it's such an arrogant bunch of buggers, and all they say is what goes on tour stays on tour and all that kind of stuff, and it's just blokes behaving badly all the way through, and I'm done with that. And I'm serious. That kind of thing doesn't occur when I go home. Like I don't know where you're from. What's your country?
England.
Dutch, English, Australian.
Oh right, okay, Dutch English, yeah. Yeah. Well, you know that in Holland, there's no insecurity about being Dutch, and we just dress up in crazy orange and put clogs on our heads and do all sorts of weird carnival things when the Dutch soccer team plays. But it's a carnival. It's just a 1 month every 4 years, and a few more weeks in between, and that's what we get into.
It might be an insecurity thing.
Yeah, I
think so too.
There's a bit of insecurity there. I don't know. You guys would have a better perspective on that than me. Who loves Shane Warne?
Can't say that I do.
I can't say that I love Shane Warne, no.
It's un-Australian.
Yeah.
Could I, while the mic's here, ask a quick question of the band? You went to Tamworth once? Or
three times.
Are you on a mission to change Tamworth, or are you going to keep going back?
I think the last time Tamworth actually broke us, and I don't know if we'll go back. It got worse and worse. And I think particularly because of the floods this year, the numbers were down, and it just seemed like the kind of with the crowd levels down, the kind of redneck factor somehow remained the same, and it was a lot more uncomfortable. Like we didn't really have.
We're planning to go to Tamworth on holiday with my parents from England later in the year, but I think you've put me off. So.
No. I should say
it's definitely worth going to. Like it is a really strange, great Australian event. You know, it's hyper Australian and it's really weird. And
it was my first time, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I really did. And there's pockets. Yes, Peel Street's a bit of a disaster zone culturally in many ways, but there's fantastic music to be had in pockets of Tamworth. You know, some of the bowls clubs around the place host their own sort of thing and get their own overseas acts in. And there's actually a very wide range of country music there, which the Patriots don't go to either. But, you know, it's actually very multicultural for all that. I really did like it there.
Yeah.
And we've got a lady in the very back row, I think.
Just in regards to between Sydney and Melbourne, what's your take on basically in Sydney, you know, it's very much very segregated in regards to, you know, you've got little groups of like, say, Chinese live there, the Japanese live there, and they kind of don't, there's a lot more issues going on with regards to, you know, discrimination for racism and not so much a multicultural connection as compared to like, say, Melbourne or, you know, Western Australia, or even in Queensland, even though we're a small state. Do you believe that the government is having a play on that in contributing to regards to the difference between, say, Melbourne or Sydney?
Well, I'll answer a little bit. It's fascinating, actually, because I'm a journalist. I'm just working on a story on a Melbourne radio announcer who, by Melbourne standards, is a shock jock, but by Sydney standards, isn't anything like it. Melbourne doesn't have shock jocks. Sydney has shock jocks. Brisbane doesn't have shock jocks. You know, the likes of Ray Hadley, Alan Jones, people who are just absolutely right-wing on absolutely everything, consistently right-wing. The bloke I'm talking about is Darren Hinch. He's right-wing on some things, left-wing on other things, but he's quite tolerant. And it's a real difference. I've noticed it is. You're right. It's a real difference between Melbourne and Sydney, but I don't think it's at the level of government. I think it goes deeper than that. I'm not quite sure why Sydney is more black and white than Melbourne in that way. Yeah, could well be. Could be a thing. Yeah.
We'll take that as a comment, because we're up against the clock at 11 o'clock, and I'm just going to ask the band to play us out with one last song. I think we've got an acoustic version of Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi up there, Steve. Maybe not. But honestly, I think we're probably the only people in the world who've ever seen a gothic horror country band playing in armchairs. So can I ask Graveyard Train to give us one last number?
Thanks, Andrew.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's, this is our first time at being a panel. I've had a lot of fun. Do you want to do the monster song? Do you think that'd work with the three of us?
Oh, it's a bit long.
It's a bit long? We'll do it. We'll trim it down. This song's all about a monster. No metaphor, just monster.
My chaps and my spurs. You were sitting there drinking whiskey for hers, and that's when I thought I'd eat you. Instead of striking now, I thought I'd sit and have a beer and listen to the tales of the drunk in my ear. That's when I thought I'd eat you. You were playing poker, and that's when I moved over. Your chips were building up like the whiskey in your cup, and that's when I thought I'd eat you. I'm a monster. I am a monster. And I only have eyes for you. I'm a monster, baby. I am a monster. And I only have eyes for you. No more hesitation. I am my concentration. I'll take you from this world. I'll offer you salvation. You don't belong here, little girl, any more than I do. I bought you a drink and said I'd walk you home, but I took you to a place where I knew we'd be alone, and that's where I get to eat you. I'm a monster. I am a monster. And I only have eyes for you. I'm a monster, baby. I am a monster. And I only have eyes for you. Let's just end it. Thank you.
Beautifully edited on the spot, just for us. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please thank Graveyard Train, whose CD, The Drink, the Devil and the Dance, is available.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
And Mr. John Van Tiggelen, whose book, Mango Country, is also available as you leave.